Welcome everyone to today's special Sygnum live stream on the US elections. How will they impact crypto? So thank you everyone for joining us today in the aftermath of one of the most consequential US elections in many years, although they always say that perhaps it's actually true this time. So I'm joined today with a very special guest, Demelza Hays. Demelza is co-manager of the Bitcoin Volatility Premium AMC at Zeltner & Co., a family office here in Zurich. Certificate is a Bitcoin-only market algorithm with 55 million assets under management. She's also chief economist at CoinTelegraph for the past 5 years. She bought her first Bitcoins back in 2013. She owned and operated Bitcoin ATMs in Liechtenstein, where she did her doctorate. So welcome, Demelza. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks a lot for having me here today, Dom.
You're very, very welcome. And I'm also joined today by a head of trading, Dominic Lohberger. Dominic leads a trading team. It's an experienced team building a trading platform, advanced trading platform, and having personal service to our clients. Tommy's a leader here at Sygnum since the early days. You can see he's not Martin Burgherr, who's unfortunately unwell today. But thank you, Dommy, for stepping in and joining us. How are you?
Thank you. It's a pleasure to talk to you today. I'm excited for this talk.
Great. Yes, so am I. So as usual, I need to say that no content in this live stream is investment advice. So a little bit of background. Of course, following the US elections this week, Donald J. Trump has become president-elect. And on the 20th of January next year, he'll be inaugurated as the 47th president of the United States. He won actually both the Electoral College and also the popular vote and the Senate. The House remains still hanging in the balance. But if that's secured, this will give him a clear path to execute his fairly ambitious agenda for the crypto. So many people are familiar now with the Trump trade. He branded himself as a pro-crypto candidate pretty early. He pledged to make America the world capital of crypto and Bitcoin. For Bitcoin maxis, I think that's quite interesting that he put it that way. The crypto industry also spent more than 130 million on this election, lobbying, and it looks like this has paid off. So buoyed by this investor confidence, Bitcoin, of course, hit a new all-time high above 75K USD. There's been a number of policy positions that have really attracted support in the industry. We'll get into these. Also, he's launched recently a new business called World Liberty Financial, with its own token and proposed US stablecoin. Previously, he entered this space here by launching NFT trading cards, where they had him dancing, wearing a superhero suit, and importantly, holding a Bitcoin. So let's get going into this here today. Today, we're going to dive into regulation, US influence, and some of the policies that could shape the industry as we move forward. But I think we just start with a very simple question. What was your first reaction to the Trump win? And what does this mean for the global crypto market? So, Melza, what's your take on that?
I mean, overall, I think it's great news. He's clearly aware of Bitcoin. He's mentioned Bitcoin many times. I think that a couple years ago, if you had said that there would be 50 million crypto users in America that would be, more or less single issue voters, and then there would be both political parties addressing Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. I think 5 years ago, it would have been hard to believe, but that's what we saw. We saw both candidates, talking about this topic, and President Trump, or former President Trump, came out very positively about Bitcoin, and he attracted many voters on that topic. And I think he has made many promises, and now it's time to see whether or not those are upheld.
Yeah. Tommy, what was your reaction?
I agree. I was trying to follow the election night. I admit I fell asleep at some point, but when I woke up, I checked crypto prices, and I think if you had checked crypto prices that morning, you knew right away what was going on. So I think overall positive development. I think we shouldn't forget what Demelza just said. It's the first US president that gets elected with Bitcoin on the agenda. So it's definitely a major shift. I think it's overall positive. What we still have to see is what the implications of his kind of geopolitical international agenda are going to be on on global macro on crypto as well. So that remains a bit more foggy. I mean, after all, it's only been around 24 hours since the election results were confirmed, right?
Yeah, surely. And since that time, there's been a lot of people sharing their views on what this means, certainly in the industry. I want to share with you two quotes, which I think are a little different here. Tyler Winklevoss, who's of course from Gemini Trust, said, "We're on the brink of a new American renaissance." So he's really painting a very big picture here. Elon Musk, of course, was quite involved in the campaign as well. He said, "America is a nation of builders. Soon you'll be free to build," bringing that freedom aspect there. So, Demelza, which one of these two quotes do you feel more at home at? The Renaissance or the builders?
Well, I like both of those quotes, and I agree with both of them, but I think I lean a little bit more towards the first one. You said it was from the Winklevoss twins.
Yep.
Because crypto unites everyone. It unites people regardless of their background. So you could be rich or poor, you can be of any faith, you can be of any race, and we all, like, that hold Bitcoin, we all share similar views, and that's why we hold those Bitcoin. So it's a really uniting technology, and I think that it's a technology that allows people to save, and those savings are the basis for innovation, because in order to, invest capital, you have to have capital, right? So I think that this technology, stable coins, allowing let's say the global south to save maybe for the first time, or as Nick Carter mentioned, to kind of, escape a high inflation environment in whatever country they live in. Also just bringing those economic those economic people are now going to come online into the global economy with digital assets. And therefore, I think that will ignite a new renaissance. On the other hand, I do think that the US is a nation of builders as well, because there's strong property rights and there's strong capital markets, and the courts work very well. So I think that it's an environment that has enabled people to become builders, and therefore, I do think both are very positive outlooks.
Sure. Definitely. A lot of the times the economic environment means we have to earn our money twice. We have to earn the money and then we have to invest to keep it, which I think is I think a lot driving that renaissance you're talking about. Domi, what's your view on these contrasting positions?
I agree with Demelza, although I would tend to lean towards Elon's statement. I mean, if we look at what Tyler's saying, it's essentially the outcome, right? The renaissance is the outcome. If all of what Trump promises materializes, this is what we're going to see. Whereas Elon leans more towards kind of emphasizing the potential that there is for the development, for the entrepreneurship in the crypto space, and so on. And I believe what we shouldn't underestimate, I mean, a president in an election campaign is essentially a professional promiser, right? I mean, they make promises at that point, and then whether he walks the talk is still to be seen, right? It's unlikely he's going to implement 100% of what he promises. Maybe it's going to be 50%, which would already be huge for crypto. Yeah. But we should also not underestimate that, crypto, while being very important, I guess, for all of us speaking here, but also to the listeners, is ultimately a tier 2 topic in his agenda. I mean, he has won this election with topics like, the immigration, domestic production, international trade, law enforcement, etc. So lots of other topics that he might need to follow up before he can actually tackle crypto. So hence I'm leaning more towards Elon as kind of the potential that's definitely there.
Potential, yeah. Yeah, saying that, it seems he does have quite a big group of people looking like they're going to be coming and supporting him in this development. So we'll see. Moving on to maybe the biggest topic about regulation. He intends to create a guiding council on crypto regulatory clarity and has pledged to draft new rules within 100 days of his inauguration. So things may indeed move quickly. There's a chance for that. But I guess, Demelza, the question for you is, how do you think, this win or this new administration with this stance could shape the regulatory landscape in the months and years moving forward? What are the big ideas that you're looking at?
So I think since the House and Congress the Senate and Congress were both switched to Republican, I think he's going to have more ability to pass these new regulations that he wants to make. And I think that that's going to, I mean, if he does proceed with the promises he's made, I think that'll speed this process up. I mean, his promises have been, so wide ranging. There was an economic model called hoteling, and what the hotel model discusses is like, how if you see parts of town where it's all car dealerships or it's all like Italian restaurants, like you see food trucks of a similar type all parked next to each other. His model basically talked about how spatial businesses work, and you attract lots of people to your location if all the jewelers are in one location and you go to get jewelry. So that model, hotels model, has been applied to politics, and what they basically say is that the politicians will say a lot of stuff to try to get that median voter, because that's where the big pool is. They're not on the outlying ranges of the distribution. And so on the one hand, Trump has said things such as, making Bitcoin a strategic reserve. He's said things such as, not supporting central bank digital currencies. So we've seen a wide range of topics. And now the question is, what is he really going to fulfill?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean that was really the next point. Is he's also, as you mentioned, proposed to make the Bitcoin Act, to make Bitcoin a strategic reserve asset in the States, with the government potentially buying up to 5% of the total supply. So, Domi, what do you think this, if it actually materializes, what do you think this means? Is this a good thing?
Depends on who you ask. I mean, it's definitely an idea on the more exotic end of the spectrum of things that he has promised to do. It's definitely not the easiest one to get through. Although, as Demelza just said, with the Red Congress, more likely than ever before. So it's definitely an interesting one. I mean, if he was to do that, great for the Bitcoin price for sure. Great for hopefully also a role model for other jurisdictions. I mean, we have seen smaller ones like El Salvador, apply a similar strategy. But I believe it can be a role model for some of the tier 1 jurisdictions out there. But that being said, I mean, whether we want a concentration of Bitcoin of that extent with the nation and then others to follow is another question. I think it's a broader, probably even a philosophical question at some point. But I would say overall, if he gets to that point, let's take it as a net positive.
Yeah, I would agree. It's a philosophical or perhaps a religious point on the decentralization agenda. Right. Demelza, what do you think of this proposal for the strategic reserve asset?
Yeah, so I mean, Cynthia Loomis from Wyoming, she presented this bill, and Eric Trump, Trump's son, has posted on X support for this bill, and I think that it's going to have a hard time passing both the House and the Senate, but it could if there's enough people in his board and his administration, I think that it does have a chance. And what I think this means in the long term is, I mean, Trump, even in one speech, he kind of said it as an off comment, but he said, and he kind of refers to Bitcoin and crypto as the same thing, which, Bitcoiners don't like because they want Bitcoin, not crypto. But he said if crypto gets really big, he could pay off the national debt, which we are seeing El Salvador do with the IMF loan. I mean, they now have, they're close to having the ability to pay off that IMF loan. And if Trump does make a strategic reserve, I mean, they're in a unique position because they can kind of just print money to buy Bitcoin, which is fairly unique, kind of like MicroStrategy's, infinite glitch that people have discussed. But what this means, and what I think it means in the long term, is that you're going to see other sovereign wealth funds and nation states, other governments, starting to really consider adding Bitcoin to their treasuries, because it's just like gold. If we go back to a gold standard, you want to have gold, right? And if you go to a new standard with Bitcoin, You want to have Bitcoin.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think the central piece that is always wrestled with is the balance between innovation and kind of investor protection. I mean, what do you think is the right balance for the industry in this aspect here? Because it's important that investors are fully protected and there's transparency and fairness, but also there needs to be room for innovation. How do you see them sort of squaring this challenge?
Well, I mean, it's as you said, it's a spectrum, right? I mean, at the moment where we are in the US is probably 90% investor protection, 10% innovation, right? And we want to see that balance shift more towards, be it 50-50 or whatever is the right number ultimately. But I believe we also have a few good role models. I mean, I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel there. If we look at Switzerland, for example, which by the way is also an opportunity for Switzerland. If the US actually opens up, there's a lot of potential for collaboration, for looking at Switzerland as a role model of how it can be done, how innovation can live alongside regulation, enabling banks like Sygnum, for example, to have an interesting business case, not just for Switzerland, but globally. And yeah, so I believe there are role models, and I believe what the US should, or what I would advise to do, is also look outside of the US and see who has done it right, and just frankly copy a few of the things that work well in other jurisdictions.
Yeah, I'd agree. Certainly here in Singapore is another case in point.
Yeah.
I mean, just on that point of influence, Demelza, if the US, arguably the 800-pound gorilla in the room with crypto already, if it does fully embrace crypto in this new administration, what do you think the renaissance could mean for the global industry outside of America?
Well, that's a great question. And I mean, one of the things we saw under the current SEC is that we had a 3,000% increase in fines for crypto companies in 2024 compared to 2023. So we've seen a lot of, for example, MetaMask right now, the SEC is suing MetaMask for allowing people to trade within the browser app. And what we saw during the last couple of years was we saw a lot of business go out of America. For example, FTX, they went to the Bahamas, which has less regulation. And then, of course, that blew up. So it's not always a great idea to over-regulate, because then they're going to go to offshore locations. And for example, a lot of Americans, they just use a VPN and they were on FTX anyways, right? Like they were using they're buying ICOs, they were at that time. They're using Bybit, they're using exchanges that they shouldn't be technically allowed to use through technologies like VPNs. And I think that, if the US takes a more transparent approach to regulation and more, kind of allowing maybe, let's say, a laissez-faire approach, I think that this will attract entrepreneurs in the US, because even if you look at Zug, for example, a lot of the foundations there, you have Canadians, you have Americans involved, but they've moved there from their home country, or they've set up their location there because Switzerland's been more transparent about the regulations. So I do think that this is an opportunity for the US to, kind of, I mean, like the internet, right? They supported the internet, they supported the progress of the internet, and then Palo Alto, Silicon Valley grew, it blossomed. We had all these tech companies. I think if you look at just like GDP growth, Europe, not Switzerland, but let's say the EU, it is falling a little bit behind compared to the US. And I do think that this is, as Mario Draghi released in his report a few months ago, that this is due to a little bit of overregulation. And I think that, like you said, there really needs to be a balance. And in terms of the global economy, I'm so excited personally, because I see this as a vehicle for personal freedom. I mean, Nick Carter, basically, he says that stable coins are kind of like exporting Western values. And what I interpret that as is property rights. I mean, this is something that has allowed us to when the individual can save and invest due to the fact that nobody can take that from them, this incentivizes them to save and invest and become entrepreneurs and build and innovate. And so I think that once the whole world has property rights, I'm very excited for what they're going to build. I mean, this is going to impact every industry, not just digital assets.
Sure. I mean, Trump has already proposed a number of specific policy positions on crypto that have been pretty well received, as we can see here. The FIT21 legislation is looking to provide legal clarity over jurisdictions, consumer protections, and he certainly supports this kind of market structure reform. But on a couple of specific ones, which I think are interesting, Bitcoin mining. Trump's positioned Bitcoin mining as domestic manufacturing, and pledged it will be made in America Bitcoins. So, Domi, what's your view on that? I mean, it certainly dovetails with some of his ambitions there for domestic energy production. But miners are pretty mobile. Do you think they'll start flocking to America with this type of policy?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting statement to claim that Bitcoins are made in the US. Again, back to the philosophical argument, but yeah, no, I mean, it will be interesting to see, because I don't think miners will move overnight. These changes, they take time, right? If you want to subsidize energy in the US, we need to come down from 13-14 cents kilowatt hour down to probably 3 cents in that range to be competitive. So that's not going to happen overnight. Most likely, you need the infrastructure to be in place. And then the question that remains is, as we see more and more emphasis on kind of green mining, where is that energy going to come from in the US? Because Trump is not necessarily known for kind of being an advocate of renewable energy. So we'll have to see what the sources of energy for that mining industry are going to be. There's also an aspect of kind of chip production, domestic chip production, that will be very interesting to see for the mining industry in the US. It's another topic that we could link to that. But yeah, overall, I would not expect the industry to move overnight, especially since the recent price movement. I mean, if you look at Bitcoin, the Bitcoin mining industry over the last probably 6 months had quite a hard time. It wasn't that easy to mine profitably. Now with prices rising, it's given a bit of air to breathe, and I believe it also takes a bit of the immediate pressure away to make a move. So I'm expecting this to be more of a long-term topic.
Yeah, I mean, besides the non sequitur of Bitcoin being made anywhere, Demelza, what's your view on the mining pledge of his?
I agree. I think it's funny if we talk about Bitcoin being made in America, and also he's discussed sanctions and putting tariffs. So I mean, is that going to apply to coins made, like for example, coins that come from Asia? Are these going to be coins that have tariffs if Americans want to buy them? So it does open up a lot of questions there. I think personally, I mean, from what I've seen, the mining industry is thriving in America. Like I would say that's the only industry in crypto that's thriving in America right now. I mean, all the developers and founders, they're not staying in America, but the miners are heavily present, and at every conference they're heavily present, and they're mining in Texas and all the states. Really, they've set up different renewable and non-renewable resources to mine. So I think that trend is already, and we saw that the miners were some of the largest donors to Trump. So I think that trend will just continue to grow.
Sure. I mean, we just touch briefly on one topic, certainly around banking. There's potentially allowing banks to interact with blockchains, be custodians and digital assets. It's the FIT21 that we were talking about before. What's your view on that one, Demelza? If I can stay with you on this one here, impact for the industry, or how important do you think this is overall to the kind of the adoption story in America?
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see how FIT21 plays out. I mean, it was kind of, I felt like, and this, what I felt FIT21 was basically trying to show that the Biden-Harris administration had an active interest in cryptocurrencies. I think that this was because it kind of happened quite quickly, and it happened during summer months when people usually aren't that active. So I felt like this was kind of an attempt to show crypto voters that they are going to, provide some regulations and be transparent. I'm not sure how the new administration under Trump is going to treat Fit 21. He hasn't mentioned it too much, although JD Vance has spoken about it more. But I do think one thing that he might do is overturn SAB 121, which will allow banks to take custody of Bitcoin. And I think this will have a lot of implications because you're going to have, like right now, the main custodian for the ETFs is Coinbase. So Fidelity does their own custody, but the rest of them are with Coinbase. And I mean, if you look at institutional adoption, like one of the things that Michael Saylor said was we need a Bitcoin spot ETF. And now we can check that off the list. Yeah. And he said we need options on the Bitcoin spot ETF. So we can check that off the list because we have the options on IBIT now. And the final thing that he mentioned we need was an institutional custodian. And I think that SAB 121 has really kept a lot of the custodians like State Street out of the market, and it has allowed companies like Coinbase to grow and really fill out that role. But I think that a lot of companies and treasuries, they're going to I suspect if State Street starts offering this, that's going to attract even more corporations and high net worth people to start to hold Bitcoin and digital assets as State Street rolls that service out.
Yeah, I believe the other aspect of Fit 21 is this delineation between the responsibility or the oversight authority of the SEC and the CFTC, right? And what I would hope for is that this clarity or this delineation, acts as a counterforce against some of these somewhat arbitrarily accused, or projects being arbitrarily accused of being securities. And we've seen it, for example, with Cumberland DRW recently being accused of operating an unregistered securities dealers business. It's just extremely hard. And I mean, you're in an environment where basically companies are suing the regulator and vice versa, right? And I think this is an environment that I would hope Trump can get out of, and I would hope that's probably one of his first priorities to stop this constant battle between basically the industry and the regulators.
Sure. I think we're almost out of time. It's been a really super interesting discussion. I might just like to offer you guys a chance to give a closing thought, and perhaps your prediction of where we're going to be in 1 year under a Trump administration. So, Demelza, do you want to give us your view 1 year from hence?
Sure. Well, Plan B put a post on X with his kind of timeline for everything. And he did say Trump was going to win. And this was several months ago in this timeline. And he said the strategic reserve bill will get passed, 2025. He suspects that they'll start buying it in April. I think that's kind of very fast. But I mean, in a year from now, let's say next fall, we could, see America buying Bitcoin. And we could see State Street entering into the market along with other custodians, which I think will, just grow the demand for the ETFs over time. I mean, I do think right now there's a couple headwinds. I know that Mt. Gox recently sent, I think it was 32,000 Bitcoin from one wallet to another. We also know that FTX is going to release the funds, which may actually flow back into the crypto market. So we have some different headwinds ahead of us. I think that if Trump can provide more regulatory clarity and also some of these more global issues regarding, the war in Ukraine and the Gaza situation, I think that over time, the uncertainty in the market will decrease and global liquidity will increase. and that's why I'm, you know, a long-term, you know, I'm a permanent bull, let's say.
Sure. So Domi, you're a natural trader. So what do your instincts tell you going to be in a year's time?
I'm mainly interested in volatility as a trader. So, and I mean, Trump definitely offers that. I mean, he's notoriously hard to predict. I think we can tell that from his last term. So predictions on Trump is a very difficult business. But I believe the question will be if he ends up being able to prioritize crypto as an agenda topic in his first year, to the extent that we all hope for. I mean, he's an entrepreneur, right? He has an entrepreneurial background, and you would expect from him that he creates an environment where crypto can thrive. I think what I in 1 year would be very excited about is if we see him following up on his pledge to kind of stop Operation Choke Point 2.0, which is basically the idea of debanking the crypto industry, at least in the US, which has global implications, especially in the institutional space. So I'd hope for that. That's my prediction. And then I think, as Demelza just said, the implication on geopolitics, international trade remains extremely foggy at the moment. I would not dare to make a prediction on that side. We'll see how that turns out.
Probably smart.
But I'm optimistic in terms of what it means for Bitcoin for sure, but also for the wider crypto industry.
Right. Okay. Well, I think we've had a great chat. We're a little bit out of time here. Demelza, thank you very much for joining us today. Dominic, a pleasure as always. Hope everyone enjoyed it. Thank you everyone for listening. Please visit Sygnum and Zeltner & Co website for more information on us. Also follow both of us on social media, catch all of our news, announcements, and research. But thank you very much for listening, and some really fascinating times to come. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.